Welcome to Hope at Night, featuring Nedley, Jared Lehman, Q&A with our live audience, and host Anil Kanda. Today's episode, Can Depression Be Reversed? And here's your host, Anil Kanda.
Are you someone who likes to ask for directions? They say that men typically don't like to ask for help, so I'm going to assume that's the truth. But today, we're talking about a topic that has a lot of people going in circles. Depression. Pretty much all of us have either experienced it or know someone who has. For many who suffer from depression, it may seem like a never-ending maze you're stuck in for life. But today, we'll meet a doctor who is reversing depression for thousands at astonishing, unheard of rates. We're talking about patients with no relapse of symptoms for even years afterwards, in as little as 10 days of treatment. He's the author of Depression, The Way Out, and I'm glad he's found his way into our studios today. Please welcome to Hope at Night, Dr. Neil Nedley. Now, do you go by Dr. Neil, Dr. Nedley?
Normally Dr. Nedley, but you can call me whatever you'd like.
All right. I know your name is very similar to my name. You're Neil, I'm Anil.
That's right.
I heard someone calling your name back there, and I actually looked in that direction because I thought they were talking to me. So, now, in regards to this program that you run in reversing depression, how many people have been part of this program?
Well, there's several programs. So the residential program, we have well over 1,000 that have gone through that program. That's the 10-day program where they actually live with us for 10 days. But we have over 10,000 that have gone through our community program and through our outpatient clinic, another 10,000. So we've been dealing with thousands of cases of depression and anxiety for the last 20 plus years.
From people all over the world.
All over the world, yeah.
And I'm sure of different, not just different cultures, but maybe different careers and backgrounds, you name it.
Yes, and people obviously that don't have careers or backgrounds because their depression and anxiety has prevented them from being successful. But after the program, they will be very successful. They'll call it the best investment they've ever made.
Wonderful. Now, you talked about a residential program. Yes. Now, this is a program where people, they go to the clinic, they get to stay there. How many days are we talking about?
It's an intensive 10-day comprehensive program, but we do very sophisticated blood work. We're looking at genetics, epigenetics. We're seeing where the biochemistry is off, where the mutation is active, because depression often runs in families, and so does anxiety. And then we're also looking at patterns of thought. And so, the typical depressed patient, 80% of their thoughts are negative, 95% of them are repetitive, so they're like LA freeways of thoughts. And so we have to actually analyze those thoughts. Most of them are distorted. Once they recognize they're distorted, we can't use that pathway anymore, and we have to create some new pathways. So it's a combination of a biochemical and a cognitive approach, along with spiritual emphasis for the purpose aspect of things, that produces this wonderful transformation that we've gotten used to every month.
Dr. Nedley, it sounds like you guys are attacking this from multiple angles, but what's the success rate of this program?
The success rate is pretty amazing. So we're looking at a 99% chance that they will have a clinical response within 10 days. About 2/3 of them will no longer even be experiencing depression and anxiety by the time they leave. The other ones will need to continue, not necessarily in the program, but in a home-based setting. We'll often follow them for 20 weeks after they get home. We want to do follow-up lab work. We want to make sure the biochemistry is fixed. We want to do follow-up cognition work to make sure that those new pathways are created in the brain and they're no longer using the unhelpful, distorted pathways. And that's how we produce the success. So we'll follow them for 20 weeks.
Well, that's fascinating. I know we're going to get to talking about this more, but let's rewind a little bit, actually a lot.
Okay.
Now, when you were a little boy, were you always thinking about becoming a doctor?
No, I always said there's one thing I knew I wouldn't be.
What changed your mind?
Well, actually, it was my father. As an engineer, he was having significant health problems in his 40s. And he started reading some books, and he started changing his diet, changing his exercise plan. I saw a new father emerge that was actually more mentally healthy as well as physical health. And so I recognized there's something about what you put into your body and what you do with your body in regards to your health, and that piqued my interest. And so that's why I started to look at the option of doing something in healthcare.
You know, you're an internal medicine doctor, but you're not a psychiatrist.
Correct.
Why are you so interested in the topic of depression? I mean, you can get into plastic surgery, you could be making lots and lots of money, but why are you dealing with the topic of depression?
Well, adult diseases of the internal organs is what an internal medicine doctor specializes in. So the brain is an internal organ. And of course, we do neurological training, some psychological training. But you're right, most internal medicine doctors are going to center in on the heart or the GI tract or the lungs or those sorts of things.
Right.
But one of the advantages of being an internal medicine doctor is we always look for the cause of disease. We don't just treat it. So in the psychiatric world, as soon as depression or anxiety is diagnosed, they then reach for the treatment, which is the antidepressant or some medicine, without really a workup. They'll make sure that the person doesn't have thyroid disease or something like that, but there's not an extensive workup as to why the patient is suffering. And with internal medicine, we don't diagnose someone with swollen foot syndrome. When we see the swollen feet, we'll try to find out the cause of the swollen feet. And there can be over 100 causes of swollen feet. Once we find that, we're very likely to cure the swollen feet. And so the same is true with depression. So when I became interested in depression, simply because I was seeing so much of it in an internal medicine practice, it's become so common now. And even the scientific literature said up to 1 in 3 people that an internal medicine doctor is seeing has depression. And I thought, if it's that common, I need to become an expert in this. I had always taught my residents they need to be an expert in the common diseases. You know, they need to know congestive heart failure as good as a cardiologist, gastroesophageal reflux disease as good as a gastroenterologist. So when I realized depression was that common, I thought, do I know this as good as a psychiatrist? And I had to admit I didn't. So I sat at the feet of preeminent psychiatrists. I actually followed them around. I noticed their patterns, and then I would ask them, you know, I noticed there's not really a workup for the cause. How many causes do you think there are of depression or anxiety?
Now, Dr. Nedley, before we go any further, what you're saying is really profound, but it's so simple. And I'm surprised it's so overlooked. You're talking about, look, we need to get down to the root causes behind this rather than just merely treat the symptoms.
Exactly.
I mean, why is that so difficult to comprehend these days?
You know, it is a profound question. I think it has to do with training. You know, psychiatry, and you know, I'm not the only one that's saying this. That's not from the outside. So there is a very famous psychiatrist from Harvard that I quote that actually states this. But he says psychiatry is primarily a diagnosis of a constellation of symptoms. Neurology is where we have objective findings. So we'll see something on the scan, we'll see something on the EEG, we'll see that sort of thing. And so psychiatry being a more subjective diagnosis, I think there's less, you know, motivation to really look for the cause of something that might be subjective. That's what I'm thinking in my own mind as to why it hasn't happened.
Right.
But in reality, it's something that is a no-brainer. We should be looking for the underlying cause.
Now, what's your approach when it comes to treating depression? What are some of the things that you utilize? You mentioned you do, you know, many different kinds of tests, but what are some of the approaches you take in treating depression?
Well, let me just back up a little bit in regards to the cause. So when they were telling me maybe 12 causes, you'd have to look for it in the scientific literature, I didn't realize I was the first one to do an extensive literature search on the over 100 causes of depression and anxiety. I began to get depressed when I found 70 and I wasn't through yet because I thought this is an exhaustive workup here. And so we found that. We've actually published it in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and we have found out there's 4 different categories of causes that will be on board in anyone with depression and anxiety. It's not just a single cause. The brain can undergo a single cause, okay. It can undergo 3 causes, okay, but once you have 4 categories of causes, you are going to have a mental health issue. You're going to have depression and anxiety. So our first step is to find out which 4 or more categories of causes are active in that particular person.
Okay,
and then we're going to reverse it.
Dr. Nedley, just so I understand, if I hear you right, you're telling me there's many different causes behind depression, but a person can essentially survive one of these causes, 2 of these causes, but if they fall into the 4th, where there's 4, a minimum of 4, then they get into this actual clinical depression. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of like the boxer that's doing jabs. One jab doesn't knock out the guy, and so you have to have multiple hits. And so we call them hits or blows to the brain. And so we're going to find the 4 or more blows that are occurring, and then we're going to back those up. And once we back them up, it's amazing how quickly the brain recovers.
So you're doing an analysis to discover which of the many causes are the top, 4? Or is that how it works?
Yeah.
And then you address it?
Yeah, now there are 10 categories of causes.
Okay.
So, but usually we don't have anyone with all 10. But
that's bad.
That's bad. That's bad. But it's also good because if they do have all 10, we can still back up each one of these categories of causes.
What are these causes? What are these categories?
Well, genetics is one. We just talked about that. Developmental, adverse childhood experiences. Lifestyle causes. This has to do with whether you're physically fit or not. Being physically fit is actually better for your brain than it is your body. It's great for your body, but it's wonderful for your brain. Circadian rhythm. Our brains work on a sleep-wake cycle, and so having a regular sleep-wake cycle, regular time for meals is important. Then there are addiction hits. If it's a substance or a non-substance addiction, it's going to produce some dopamine problems in the brain and other neurotransmitters, so we have to deal with that aspect. Nutrition. This is one area that's probably the most overlooked portion, but what we eat does get turned into neurotransmitters, and we have to have these amino acids into our brain to be able to make the neurotransmitters. And if we have it in our diet but not in our brain, it's not going to work. And so a lot of people are on a diet where the tryptophan ends up in their muscles but not in their brain. And we need tryptophan to be able to make serotonin, for instance. So nutrition is a very important role, far more important than even what antidepressant medicine you're on. And the studies are clearly showing that nutrition has a lot more to do with our mental health than even what drugs that we're taking. And then there are toxic causes, things like mercury, lead, too much copper. Then there's social and stress causes. That's an 8th category. 9th category would be medical causes, like maybe a thyroid problem, autoimmune disease, traumatic brain injury. And then finally, frontal lobe causes. This is the spiritual and the analytical portion of the brain. And so studies show in order for the brain to get better, we have to enhance the frontal lobe, the circulation of the brain that has to do with purpose, executive function, and the spiritual being. And so we have a strong spiritual component in our program, no matter what your spiritual background, to enhance that frontal lobe circulation.
And you find that patients are totally open, regardless of their religious background, to the things you have to say about spirituality?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even atheists, we love to treat atheists as well, because atheists worship. The difference is who they're worshiping and what they're worshiping. But if they're worshiping, we know they have a frontal lobe. And if they're able to reflect upon themselves, even suicidal people, I get encouraged when someone is suicidal, because you can't be suicidal without having a frontal lobe, because a frontal lobe gives you the ability to reflect upon yourself. Animals, for instance, no matter how bad their life is, they will never take their own life, because their frontal lobe isn't large enough to be able to reflect upon themselves. So if you have the ability to reflect upon yourself, we know you have a frontal lobe. That means you have the power of neuroplasticity to be able to change that brain, and I'm very excited to work with you.
So in regards to all your findings and your research, what has surprised you the most?
Really how quickly people recover. The first time we did, I used to just treat this in an outpatient setting, and it would take several weeks because we can't do everything at once in an outpatient setting. So our first residential program, this was back in 2002, I told everyone who signed up, don't expect to be any better in 17 or 18 days, because it was an 18-day program back then. I said, it'll take weeks for this, but if you stay on it, it will get better. Well, they started getting better in 10 days. And so then our 18-day program was able to be shortened. That made it less expensive. It made it more accessible. And there is a group, about 20% are going to need the full 18 days, but most will actually get well with just the 10-day program.
Now, you wrote your findings in this book, Depression, The Way Out.
Correct. Yeah.
People read, this is a heavy book right here, but people go through this book and they find clear, practical answers?
Yeah, absolutely. There have been many people who've just read the book and applied it and gotten better. However, a lot of depressed people don't have the focus or don't have the motivation to apply these things. And so if you don't have that, then you might need something more than just the book. But we'll give you the book when you come through the program. That's part of the reading assignment.
Dr. Nedley, what really fascinates me the most as you are sharing is that depression gives the illusion that it's never going to end.
Correct.
But what you are telling me from the research, the findings, the experience, the program, is that there actually is a fast turnaround program for many people.
Absolutely.
That's really surprising considering what people are experiencing when they're actually in depression. Is that right?
Yeah, and part of the reason for that is the antidepressants don't help you make more serotonin. They don't help you build up more receptors. They're called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, but they plug the vacuum cleaners of the neurons releasing serotonin so that there's more serotonin in the synapse, but they're not taking care of the underlying problem. And as a result, we short the neuron of the very substance that it was already short in. And so when you go the antidepressant route, you're going to likely relapse within a year. That's why you have to keep going back and seeing the doctor. You have to have your dosage increased. Then we have to add this medicine and that medicine, and you become what's called a psychiatric cripple. And the doctor hasn't actually done a workup to try to find out why was those neurons short in serotonin to begin with? Why is it that we had to try to plug the vacuum cleaners to have a false way of increasing this synaptic area? But once we find that, what a difference it makes, and they're able to get off their antidepressants. They feel better off them than they do on them because of the side effects, and so most people within 20 weeks of the program, they're depression-free, anxiety-free, and medication-free.
Now, has anyone ever come to your program and said to you, Dr. Nedley, it's probably not going to help me? Like, I've tried many different things. My case is an utterly hopeless case. It's not going to work. Have you ever met people like that?
Every program we meet them. Every program. I mean, depression has feelings of hopelessness as part of it. And so they will tell me that neither this or any other program will help. And of course, someone else has encouraged them to come, maybe put up an ultimatum for them to come. We've had spouses say, unless you go through that program, I'm not living with you anymore. So they're there for exterior reasons. But, I have to sometimes just, ask them a simple question. Do you think the biggest expert in the world doesn't know something about depression and anxiety? And of course, they're thinking, well, probably Dr. Nedley thinks he's the biggest expert. And so they'll say, yeah, I think it's probably very true that the biggest expert doesn't know something about depression and anxiety. I said, if the biggest expert doesn't know something about depression and anxiety, is it possible that you don't know something about depression and anxiety? And what you don't know might actually help you? And then they're willing to say, well, yeah, makes sense. Maybe there is something. And so then they're at least willing to try this approach in 10 days, and they're very pleased at the end.
Now, I'm sure, as you've shared, many people their lives have been changed and transformed by going through this program. What are people saying many years later after the program is done? What are they telling you? Oh,
they're telling me it's the best investment they've ever made. They're telling me that this was the foundational change in my life. And some of them are even writing books in regards to what their life was before the program and after the program. And it's so thrilling. I don't even need to get paid. Just seeing one human being after another be transformed is payment enough for me?
I wish there were more doctors like you out there. Now, how can people find out more about this depression recovery program?
Nedleyhealth.com. So it'd be a good place to start, and there's a little tab that says programs. So it would tell about the residential program or the community program. Not everyone needs the residential program. Some people just need to apply this in an outpatient setting, and it's a lot less expensive to do that. So community program might be an approach for them. There's an online program, and there's other modalities that we can introduce them to. But if you want the most rapid change, or you think you're stuck and can't do this on your own, we're glad to see you face to face and have you go through the residential program and live with us for 10 days.
Dr. Nedley, this is fascinating. I know we have much more to discuss, and I can't wait to get into it. We've been talking with Dr. Neil Nedley on how depression isn't necessarily a life sentence. With the right tools and the right hope, freedom is definitely possible. When we come back, we're going to meet one of Dr. Nedley's patients who struggled for years with depression and see what we can learn from his experience. Don't go away. Welcome back to Hope at Night. If you've ever felt like hope was just out of reach, our next guest knows exactly how that feels. Jared Lehman spent years trapped in clinical depression, searching for answers that never came. But today, he's a walking testimony that hope and healing are possible. Please welcome to Hope at Night, Jared Lehman. Jared, can you share with us what your growing up years were like?
It was quite difficult, Anil. There were a number of these adverse childhood experiences that Dr. Nedley had spoke about. There was suicide in my immediate family. There was addiction. There was a genetic component of it as well. Both of my mother and father struggled for many years with both depression, severe anxiety. And being a young boy in the formative years of my development, I didn't know how to handle that, right? So a lot of people will either act out, but me personally, I withdrew. I became extremely isolated, and I just wanted to run and hide. What really changed for me at about the years of 9 or 10 years old was I was suffering from a cold, and my mom had given me some NyQuil. And I noticed that before the physical ailments of this NyQuil went away, the emotional and the mental ailments went away. It was like a breath of fresh air had been taken out of me. It was like this anxiety had been removed from me. And so as a 9 or 10-year-old little boy, I began self-medicating with stuff from the medicine cabinet. Anything that would sedate me, Benadryl, as I mentioned, NyQuil. That was my solution, right? Because I did not know how to cope. I did not have a good social support as well, and it was very stigmatized.
So at 9 years old, you were just reaching into the medicine cabinet and you were just pulling. Look, I thought it was bad when I was overdosing on Flintstone vitamins.
Yeah.
But you're talking about like you're going for the NyQuil. You're reaching for painkillers.
Anything I could get my hands on that would change the way that I felt. I was so uncomfortable in my own skin, and I didn't know what depression was. I had no idea what anxiety was, but I knew that this worked for me, right? And although it's a terrible solution, and I would definitely not recommend it, it's what I knew. And as the years went on, I realized because my dad struggled with alcohol and drug addiction, that I could just reach into his stash, if you will, and that would be my medication. This went on all the way through middle school and even through high school.
What'd you do after high school?
So in high school, I knew that something needed to give. I needed some direction. I needed some guidance. And I was having a conversation with my grandfather who fought in World War II at the Battle of the Bulge. And he was telling me about the struggle and how difficult life was for them in that specific battle. And I had an aha moment. I realized that this was what I needed to do. I needed to join the military. And about 2 weeks after that, Anil, I went and found a Marine Corps recruiting station in Austin, Texas, and I signed my name on that dotted line.
Wow. How many years were you in the military?
I was in for 4 years, and then I went back worked for the Marine Corps as a contractor after that.
Okay. What else took place after you left the military?
Things went really well after I left the military. I did really well in college. Like I said, I had some very successful contracting jobs for the military back in overseas stations. It went very well. But as I really settled into life, I picked up almost immediately picked up back where I was as a youth. The depression sunk in, the anxiety sunk in, and I didn't know what to do, but I went back to what I knew worked, and that was the self-medication. And I went down that road for a period of time, but then obviously I realized that was not sustainable, so I began taking myself to the normal traditional methods for healing. So I would go to doctors, psychologists.
Was there a moment that you hit rock bottom?
Absolutely, I remember it very vividly. I woke up one morning to go to school, and it was as if the weight of the world was on top of me, that feeling of depression, that I just could not even get out of bed. I could not function. I could not even do the bare minimum to take care of myself. And I knew at that point that there was a huge problem.
It's incredible as you're sharing. I'm just thinking about just the cycles that you have been in, growing up, the things that started it. And then for a time it seemed under just, the discipline of the military, and then it just rebounded, and sometimes the rebound's even worse than what it was originally.
Yeah, absolutely. I picked up where I left off, but the truth is it was so much more worse because of the trauma. Like, I loved my time in the military. I got to see the world, but I was also deployed to very dangerous environments in the Middle East. And so you get used to this rapid, repetitive deployment schedule where I would come home from one combat deployment, be home for 2 months, and then be headed back overseas. So there was that component as well. As now that I'm out of the military, I'm separated from that, and I'm going to school, I'm sitting at a desk all day, life became very meaningless, very boring, very uninterested and less exciting than what I had experienced before.
Jared, could you describe for us what it's like in the depths of depression?
It's very terrible, right? So I had the most awful feelings of worthlessness, really, the feelings that I would be better off dead. Apathy was a big thing for me. I've always been very active in my life when I was healthy. But now I'm at a point where I can't even get out of bed without crying. I can't function. I can't go take a shower without breaking down in tears. And the craziest part, Anil, would be people from the outside would look at me and tell me, they said, you have a great job, you have a beautiful family, I want what you had, or want what you have. And I would tell them, if you only knew what was going on up here, you would run and hide. You want nothing to do with that. It's very hard to describe for people that haven't gone through it.
Yeah, and it doesn't help when people attempt to comfort you and with some superficial lines, or here's an Instagram video you should watch, you'll fix everything. It doesn't work.
Right. Well, and like Dr. Nedley said too, people will try to help, right? But your ability to focus and to pay attention are just not there. Even reading, somebody had gifted me a copy of that book many years ago, and I would open up to page 1. I'm like, there's no way I have the capacity to even start reading this because my depression was so terrible.
Dr. Nedley, Jared is sharing what he was going through. You find what he was sharing similar to what many people experience?
Yeah, it's a pattern, and it's characteristic of most of the people that come through our residential program to have those symptoms.
Why specifically a lack of motivation? That's really important for many people, especially men. You got to have a drive, a motivation. Why is it that is affected when people are in this state of depression?
It has to do with the neurotransmitter dopamine. So dopamine is what gives us the willingness to seek out, to be motivated for healthy things. And so the certain lifestyle and genetic factors made it difficult for Jared to have those dopamine levels. And he was doing dopamine surges in ways that were picking off dopamine receptors. That's what addictions do. So he got in the cycle of addictions, and so he didn't have the dopamine receptors to be motivated.
And is it true, even though he like many experienced a high when they maybe self-medicated, but then the low is lower than when they were before?
Exactly. It keeps getting, each time you do that dopamine surge, it keeps getting less and less. And then in between times, even though there's nothing bad going on in his life, he had a job and he had a wife and a family. Between times, the dopamine levels are very much in the dysphoria stage. So now you're doing it just to get numb. and then you go back down. And so the vast majority of his day is spent in the dopamine basement.
That's incredible. Jared, can you share the moment where things changed for you?
Absolutely. So my wife is a pediatric home healthcare nurse who specializes in taking care of trach vent children. And she works long 12-hour shifts, and she always plays the Hope Channel in the background while she's working. And one night in particular, she was very excited to run home and tell me about this physician that she had heard being interviewed on the Hope Channel by a man by the name of Dr. Anil Nedley. And she said he had an over 99% success rate in helping people to overcome both depression, anxiety, and addiction without medication, a totally holistic approach. And you have to understand, Anil, at that point, I had been 15 years trying anything under the sun that I could get my hands on, and everything leaving me worse than I had been before. And so while I was a little bit interested, I was highly skeptical. But what kind of put me over the edge at this point was shortly before that, I had a prescription for Ativan, and I told my wife I didn't want to live anymore, and I began to take a bunch of the pills of Ativan. She began to wrestle it out of my hand, and I took as many as I could, and I was out. And I woke up in the hospital a few days later and ended up spending about 9 days in the hospital. And so that was really the beginning point of us seeking a different solution. And that is how I became to learn about Nedley Health, and was really what encouraged me to go meet Dr. Nedley in person.
Do you remember that day he met you?
I do remember it, yeah. And I knew it was going to be challenging because he came to us on not only the benzos, but opioids, and you know, he was loaded up, and you know, I told him it's likely going to be more than 10 days because we had to detox him at first, and but I realized that he wasn't going to be able to do this on his own, so we kept him there. We do detox people as well if they need to be, and he needed to be, but yeah, I'm sure the first part of the program was pretty dysphoric for him, coming down off of this, although we tried to make it as easy as possible.
Jared, do you remember that? What are some of the things you experienced during that time?
It was probably one of the worst moments of my life because I am now completely sober. I turned in all my my antidepressant medications to Dr. Nedley. I said, take them, doc. I don't want them. They're not helping me. I want to try something different. And for 2 days, I was more sick than I've ever been in my entire life.
I should mention, we don't take antidepressants away from people normally. You know, we fix the problem first.
Right.
I was done at that point. I had 15 years of them trying, many of them, and just failing. So I was incredibly ill. And then, but on day 3, I was beginning to feel a little bit better, Anil, and I decided I want to participate with the rest of the program and really get the most out of it. So I left my room, and the program director, Linda, was out in the lobby, and I said, Linda, I want to participate. Where's everybody at? She said, you're just in time. The men are downstairs doing hydrotherapy right now. Now, I'm a Texas boy, right? I have no idea what hydrotherapy is, but she explains like you get to be in a hot tub for a minute, and then you get in a cool tub for a brief moment after that. And I'm thinking, you know, that might actually feel really good right about now. So the hot tub part was amazing. But as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end, right? And so it's time to get into this cold tub, right? And I get in, and before I can totally sit in, every nerve in my body screams, get out. And I get out of that tub so quickly. And I tell Daniel, and he said, Jared, you need to get back in. It's going to be good for you, especially what's going on right now with your body and the withdrawal. I said, you may be right, Daniel. There's no way in the world I'm ever getting back in that tub again. Second time, he said, Jared, you need to do it. It's going to help you overcome this more quickly. I said, Daniel, you may be right. I want to do everything else in this program. There's no way. And on the third time of him saying that and me refusing, I heard the voice of God spoke to my heart, and I will never forget it. And it was so convicting. It said, Jared, if Jesus can be beaten and nailed to that tree for you, then you can get into that tub. And it was the most profound thing I've ever experienced, Anil, because it not only did it convict me that I was being selfish, but it also reminded me that I needed to be willing to try something different. And that's why I came there, to get out of my comfort zone. And so you would think that hearing the voice of God would make that experience a little bit easier, but it didn't. It did not at all. It did give me the courage and the strength to get through that. And I did finish the rounds of hydrotherapy. And for the first time after 15 years, even just after one session, I became alive. I began to feel again. I had emotions. I had hope. I had energy. And I thought, if this could happen after just one instance of hydrotherapy, what else, how much better can I improve? And so I ate everything else up, all the classes, all the exercise, the nutrition, and it's been a daily part of my life for the last 4.5 years.
That's incredible. Why would taking a bath be part of, I mean, we know taking a bath is good, but why a hot and cold bath important to depression recovery out of all things?
Yeah, well, it has to do with what we call heat shock protein. So it does have to be uncomfortably cold, but not dangerously cold. So it's uncomfortably cold, then the heat shock proteins, partly in the brain, start warming the person up. This is why we end with the cold, and we get natural dopamine levels. So dopamine levels will go up like 350%. This is why he felt good even after that first treatment and was motivated again. And it's worked so well for him, he has his own cold tub now in his home.
You do it every day?
Pretty much, yeah. Almost every day. My wife does it too. Yeah, it's a family routine or family ritual now, because after I got back, my wife saw such a profound change. And I'd been to 6 residential treatment centers before this point, 6. Nothing helped for me. Everything that modern medical science could throw at me in 15 years failed for me, but the cure, I found that cure in 10 days at the residential program, and my life has been changed ever since.
So hydrotherapy, I know there's someone right now asking, please ask Dr. Nedley for how you exactly do hydrotherapy. So whoever, I'm gonna ask that right now. How exactly do you do hydrotherapy?
Well, first of all, it's good not to do it on your own at first. I mean, you know, Jared's been trained, and so he knows how to do it. But you do want to get the person warm, you know, 104 degrees Fahrenheit or so. Get them nice and toasty warm, almost where they're too warm, like maybe I should get out of here. And then you put them into a minute of cold. And that cold at first, now he said it was terrible, but it was probably 55, 58 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like the Pacific Ocean, you know, which is a cold ocean. But as we get it down further, and each time we crank it down a little bit more, he was just telling me before the program, he's in the 40s. So each time, depending on the tolerability, we'll bring the temperature down so that it's even more uncomfortably cold and where the heat shock proteins have a chance to work. It improves brain circulation as well. So the entire brain gets stimulated with this treatment. And we'll do it at 3 cycles. So you go back into the hot, back into the cold, then the hot the 3rd time, and then you end with the cold the last time. And then when they're in the residential program, we normally do this a couple of times a day, so morning and afternoon. And that helps them to even focus during the lectures. It helps them to engage in every other aspect of the program.
Jared, last question. How has your life changed since the program?
In ways, Anil, that I can't even imagine. So I got back, and I was a little bit skeptical at first because I had gotten a little bit of relief from these previous programs, but nothing ever stuck. At about the 2 to 3 month mark, I would always have a relapse back into depression and then begin the self-medicating again. So this time I told myself, if I can get to 6 months, I will know for a fact that I am cured permanently. On my 6-month date of being home, I said, I need to do something to share this message. I need to get involved. And I travel all over the country to tell people that there is hope. There is a way to recover from depression, anxiety, and addiction. And one thing I like to ask the audience when I travel these places is I like to ask, as a show of hands, who knows one person or who doesn't know anybody that doesn't have a mental health issue or an addiction, and yet, to this date, I've never seen one hand go up. So it is a huge issue, and we can help. And I will say this, you don't have to be a physician, you don't have to have a background in mental health. All you have to have is a passion to helping, to want to help other people. And I was an IT guy for many, many years. And you know, just I'll end on this, Anil, that when I meet people that I used to know in high school or have a reunion with my military friends, and they ask what I'm up to these days, they say, and I tell them I'm involved in mental health, and they always say the same thing. They say, you're the last person that should be involved in mental health, but it really is a testimony to the power and love of God.
That's beautiful. You know, you were a recipient of these God-given principles, this program that helped you to recover, and now you go around helping and teaching and inviting people to be part of the very same thing that helped you.
I do.
What an incredible story.
Amen.
Thank you. I know we have more to discuss soon. We've heard not just proof from Jared, but a promise that healing is possible and that hope is real. Before we go to our next segment, I want to invite you to visit our website at hopetv.org/hopeatnight, where you can view previous episodes and also download this season's free gift. So be sure to check it out. When we come back, we'll take some questions from our live audience, so stay with us. Welcome back to Hope at Night. We've heard powerful insights from Dr. Anil Nedley and a transformational testimony from Jared Lehman. Now we're going to open up the floor from some questions from our live audience. Who's up first? Right over there.
Doctor, you said that after treatment, the brain changes. Do you mean physically changes? And if so, in what way?
Physically and biochemically. So physically, we will actually see the anterior cingulate gyrus in the frontal lobe expand. So this area is shrunken down normally with depression and anxiety, and you can see this on MRI scans, it actually expanding. We also have taken pre and post PET scans, and we'll see the frontal lobe circulation go up as well. And then through our epigenetic testing, we will see serotonin activity, norepinephrine activity, dopamine activity, GABA activity, which is a neuroinhibitory neurotransmitter that helps with anxiety. We'll see all of those naturally go up.
Are there hormonal changes? I mean, do they get more energy all of a sudden? We know motivation increases, but I mean, are we talking energy?
Yeah, energy will go up. That's part of the norepinephrine neurotransmitter is the energy aspect of things. And also hormonally will change. I don't know if you want to mention, Jared, about your hormonal change that you noticed.
Yeah, thank you.
All of TV is watching right now. Let's go ahead and share,
This is
please.
not going to put me on the spot at all. Right? So when I came to the Dr. Nedley's residential program, I had previously had my testosterone levels checked. They were incredibly low. And just to be blunt, my desire for intimacy was just not there, right? The depression it caused so many different physiological effects, and that was one of them. After the 10-day residential program, I went home, and we now have a 2.5-year-old beautiful baby boy. So
Proof is in the pudding, or in your child,
right
as we
there,
say,
yes,
right?
Yes.
That's incredible to know what affects us mentally, affects us physically. The relationship is very clear. Any other questions? Right over there.
Is there a link between ADHD and depression, and does one exacerbate the other?
Yes, there is a link. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder often comes with less success as well because you're not able to focus. And also, if you can't focus well, you can't manage distressing emotions well. The area of the brain that is important for focus is also important for managing distressing emotions. So we treat ADHD as well because we want to get at the root cause of that, and because of the bridge over to depression and anxiety, we have ADHD in every one of our programs, and the focus will dramatically improve, and we'll be able to improve that area of the brain.
Dr. Nedley, a follow-up question. You know, in regards to this attention deficit disorder, the way you treat it, is it similar to the way you treat the depression recovery?
Yeah, there are some similarities. There may be some differences as well. Sometimes we have too much norepinephrine for an attention deficit. This is why they're so distractible. So they might have too much norepinephrine. And normally with that, there's not enough dopamine. It's like a teeter-totter. Norepinephrine's up here, the dopamine's there. And so with that, there's nutritional changes that we can do, particularly a supplement that can lower copper levels and raise zinc levels, and that will balance out, and they'll be able to focus better. and they'll have the proper motivation as well.
And you've seen improvements like you do with those that are suffering from depression.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Right over there.
Yes, Dr. Neal, I wanted to know what advice you would give to a spouse who's married to someone who's suffering from depression and anxiety.
Yeah, I would encourage them to go onto our website and actually take the free depression test. Sometimes they don't even recognize they have it. Males in particular, because they don't have necessarily crying spells or those sorts of things, it goes unrecognized unless they actually take the test. And then when they take it and they realize, wow, this is pretty significant, they might be willing to do something about it. Mental health is one of the primary reasons for divorce, and it really doesn't have to be that way if we fix the mental health.
Now, Jared, this is something that's very personal to you. What would you say in response to that?
Don't give up. Keep praying for them. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Any other questions?
This question's for Jared. Was there any sort of spiritual struggle when you first started the program? And if there was, what things helped you overcome that?
There was definitely a level of spiritual apathy. There was a lot of, and a lot of that was a result of the way that I had felt about myself, the things that I had done in my past, that God would not hear me, God would not be willing to heal me. And for many years, I had prayed this simple prayer. I said, God, I don't know if you will heal me, but I know that you are the only solution to these problems. And so there was actually a lot of issues that I had spiritually, and that's what was great about going to the program. Not only does it address the physical, the mental, and the emotional, but the spiritual aspect as well.
And Jared, as you're looking back from your experiences that you had and what you came out of, do you believe that in any part of your journey, God was fed up with you, tired of you, left you, abandoned you?
I felt that way for a long time, absolutely. Especially during my time in the Marine Corps, I did feel that way. Now, absolutely not. I can see how he carried me every step of the way. Even I was not born into a church family, if you will. I actually came about that through a divine intervention in and of itself. So I can actually absolutely look back, I should say, and see that he was with me every step of the way, even when I felt certain that he was not.
That's beautiful, and a beautiful reminder to all of us. Any other questions?
Does sleeping with the lights on affect depression?
It actually does. It's better to sleep in a dark environment, and it's actually better to wake up with bright light and particularly the blue sky wavelength. And so this is what sets our circadian rhythm. And so it's best to have light in the daytime and when we're awake, and darkness at night. If there's light, we don't make melatonin. And melatonin is a very important fix and rejuvenate nighttime hormone. And if there's not enough light in the daytime, we don't make enough serotonin. And we have to make serotonin in the daytime to be able to even make melatonin at night.
Dr. Nedley, you talked about when you wake up, you need to see, what was that phrase that you said? When you wake up, you need to be seeing blue?
Blue, that's right. You don't want blue in the evening, but you do want blue in the morning. And it's the same wavelength as the blue sky. So in the wintertime, we'll actually utilize light glasses, where it actually emits. We put them on. In fact, Jared had to probably wear that. And it was the 480 nanometer wavelength blue light that helps him make serotonin in the morning and then sets the body clock. After 7 days of doing that at the same time, you're ready to wake up rejuvenated and you're ready to sleep like a baby at night.
That's incredible. I know that we can better analyze, illnesses and, diseases of the mind today better than what we've done in years past. But there's no doubt in my mind that there has been obviously an increase of mental health issues like never before. Do you connect it to obviously modern society and the conveniences that we have?
Oh yes, these screens are not very healthy for our brain.
Right.
And they're producing all this blue in the evening. Worst time to use screens is an hour before going to bed, and that's when most people use them. And also, all of that screen time is taking us away from bright enough light. You can't really even see your screen when you're out in the sun. And so, and that bright light of the sun is very healthy for us in more ways than one, not just the ultraviolet and vitamin D, through the eyes and also through infrared. Near infrared actually increases our intracellular melatonin in our brain. It actually penetrates the skull. And that can be morning and evening. It doesn't have to be direct sun. Sunrise to sunset, we're getting brain benefits by being outside.
I am taking mental notes of everything you're saying, by the way. A lot of changes in my life. Any other questions? Right over there.
How do you help someone that doesn't even want to be helped?
A lot of our individuals might have secondary gain. If you don't want to be helped, why don't you want to be helped? Are you getting more attention by staying in depression? Are you getting some sort of benefit out of it? Or is it because you think that you won't be able to accomplish anything anyways? You've just totally given up on yourself, so why try to get better because I'm worthless and I won't be able to get better? We have to find out why they don't want to get help and then deal with that issue. But even those that don't want to get help, we see them and they come. I'm not sure Jared really wanted to get help. It really took the encouragement of his wife to get him over there. But help is for everybody, even those who don't want it.
Jared, what would you say?
Again, to kind of echo what Neil said, you know, the question would be why? Do they not feel like, have they tried many things in the past and fail, like was my experience, right? I feel like, you know, if they had tried many things, try one more thing. Step out of your comfort zone. Be willing to step into the unknown, right? What do you have to lose? You already know what it's like to stay in that situation, right? And we know that it can actually only get worse with time. A lot of people don't know that there is a financial toll to not doing anything about depression or anxiety. And I think the studies show it's about what, $300,000 per individual down over the course of a lifetime if they leave depression and anxiety untreated. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's a huge amount of toll on their family, less income for them. Also all of the medical bills and all of the family complications and all of that. So, and that was 15 years ago, that $300,000 study. It's more than that now.
Right, and I just imagine that what makes up that cost is maybe the overeating, maybe the self-medication, maybe all the, whatever you escape to just adds up. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Doctor, what negative side effects can anxiety have?
Yeah, anxiety suppresses the immune system considerably. In fact, during the pandemic, this was CDC data, but the media didn't give it a lot of publicity. They gave publicity to obesity killing people with COVID. Just as common as obesity killing people was anxiety, because anxiety suppresses your immune system. The people most anxious about COVID when they got it were most likely to end up in the hospital and ICU and die. And so there's increased risk of cancer. There's also increased risk of even non-physical diseases. You're more likely to have accidents. You're more likely to die from overdoses, all sorts of factors there. So, and that's true in a little different way with depression, but a lot of people think, well, these are just the symptoms I have, but those symptoms, if they're not treated, will shorten your life. And they will cause some significant adverse quality of life in physical diseases. And so that's why it should be treated and not just put up with.
Any other questions?
I was wondering if you had any good at-home holistic remedies for depression.
Yeah, so some simple ones. Start becoming fit. If you're not fit, start an exercise program, get a fitness trainer, work on becoming fit. Increase your antioxidant vegetables and fruits. Those can be very powerful in starting to improve your depression. So the berry family, for instance, and the fruits, the greens, and even garlic is the #1 antioxidant vegetable. The legumes are great. Third, get on a regular sleep-wake schedule. We can all do that, and really it requires an alarm clock at first to get up at the right time, go to bed at the right time, and then finally do something to stimulate your frontal lobe. In other words, maybe read some spiritual material, start to try to advance and grasp something to improve the spiritual and analytical portion of your brain. Anybody can do those things, and they'll help, and together they'll help quite a bit.
Dr. Nedley, Jared, this has been an amazing episode. A lot of practical things we can all do when we go through those seasons. Thank you so much. We've learned that depression isn't necessarily a dead end, and reversal is possible. Jared's story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, God isn't done with us. Whatever you're going through, remember, you are not alone. You are valued, and you were created for more than just survival. You were created for hope. Don't forget to find us on social media and to visit us at hopetv.org/hopeatnight for your gift. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.